This is Soda, a 19-year-old university student who, on what should have been a completely normal day, was seriously working his part-time job selling sausages inside a supermarket. And if there was one thing Soda was actually confident about, it was customer service. He promoted the new Sanjen pork sausages as convenient, easy to prepare, and perfect for families with children, quickly gathering a crowd around his station. Before long, the products were practically selling themselves. His manager watched the whole thing and later complimented him, saying he had become a genuinely reliable employee. Soda explained that he had learned how important it was to understand what customers actually needed instead of simply pushing products at them. Funny enough, he had not always been good at this. He used to be clumsy and pretty useless at most things, but after working countless part-time jobs and learning from different managers, he had slowly become someone who could adapt almost anywhere. As the shift ended, the other employees began saying goodbye. The moment a few of his female coworkers spoke to him, however, Soda immediately stiffened up and awkwardly lowered his head. His manager noticed this and pointed out that despite everything he had learned, there was still one area where he had almost zero experience. Soda admitted that he became nervous whenever he had to speak casually with girls. Customers were easy because he knew exactly what role he was supposed to play, but normal conversations were a completely different battlefield. That was when his manager suddenly asked him an extremely strange question. Would he have any interest in being summoned to another world? Soda stared at her, wondering where that had come from. He knew the concept from fantasy stories, obviously, but before he could ask whether she was joking, she pulled out what looked like a magical wand and casually asked him to go save another world. A glowing magic circle appeared underneath his feet. At this point, Soda did not even have enough time to process the betrayal. His manager introduced herself properly as Nostra, the Sage of Prophecy, wished him luck, and sent him away in a flash of light. Soda opened his eyes somewhere completely unfamiliar, surrounded by fallen men and signs of a recent battle. Before he could figure out where he was, someone noticed him and immediately asked whether he was the summoned hero. Soda was still trying to accept the fact that the whole otherworld thing had actually happened when a massive demon knight suddenly swung a battle axe at him. Soda barely avoided becoming the shortest isekai protagonist in history and screamed that he was absolutely not the hero. The demon knight demanded an explanation. Soda was wearing strange clothing, had appeared directly in the middle of a summoning circle, and looked suspicious in basically every possible way. Soda trembled as he realized that if he panicked, he would probably die before learning anything about this world. So instead, he activated the one ability he actually trusted, customer service mode. He calmly claimed that his clothes were simply the latest fashion and began speaking with the same confidence he used when selling products. The demon knight hesitated. A real hero probably would not stand there politely chatting with demons, and Soda looked far too weak to be someone capable of defeating an army. Eventually, the knight concluded that the actual hero must have escaped. Soda silently celebrated and tried slipping away. Naturally, it did not work. The demon knight stopped him and removed her helmet, revealing that she was actually a woman. Soda immediately froze again. She introduced herself as a commander in the Demon King's army, but the second Soda accidentally referred to her as a girl, her sword passed dangerously close to his head. So yes, clearly a wonderful first impression. The commander ordered her soldiers to take Soda to the Demon King's castle as a prisoner. Locked inside a cell later that night, Soda finally let out everything he had been holding back. If he was going to be summoned to another world, why could he not appear in a beautiful royal palace? A guard outside told him to shut up. Soda immediately apologized. Looking through his belongings, things somehow became even worse. All he had was his wallet and a broken tablet. No sword, no magic, no legendary armor, and apparently no explanation from Nostra either. Then, while searching his bag, Soda discovered something he definitely had not packed. An old notebook. Written across the cover were the words, "Box of Abyssal." For a brief moment, hope returned. Maybe Nostra had secretly given him a legendary magical artifact after all. Summoning stories usually came with some kind of cheat ability, so perhaps this was finally his. Then Soda opened it. His soul nearly left his body. This was not some ancient spellbook. It was a notebook he had made back in elementary school after becoming obsessed with RPG games. Inside were drawings of ridiculous imaginary items he had invented as a child, complete with dramatic names and descriptions. The thing was basically a physical record of every embarrassing fantasy he had hoped would stay buried forever. However, something inside the notebook instructed him to call out the name of one of the items. Soda did not believe it, but he had nothing better to try. He selected an item, shouted its name, and suddenly, a bottle appeared in front of him. Even more shocking, It continuously produced water. Soda stared at the notebook. His childhood cringe had somehow become his special ability. Before he could experiment further, the female commander returned and ordered him out of the cell. Soda followed nervously and was taken into a room filled with weapons that looked perfectly capable of ending his new life immediately. Now that she was sitting in front of him without her helmet, Soda finally got a proper look at her. Despite the horns and tail marking her as a demon, she was surprisingly cute, which immediately made his already terrible communication skills with women even worse. Commander demanded his name. He introduced himself as Soda. Then she asked the question he had been hoping to avoid. Why exactly had he appeared inside the special area where humans were supposed to summon their hero? According to their intelligence, the human nation had been preparing a hero summoning there. Heroes were natural enemies of demons, powerful individuals who often attacked them without hesitation. As a commander protecting the demon world, she could not ignore the possibility that Soda was connected to the summoning. She demanded his true identity. Thinking quickly, Soda claimed that he was actually a traveling general store merchant who collected strange materials and magical items. He explained that he had been delivering an extremely rare object required for the hero summoning, but the item had shattered after the ritual activated. The commander noticed the notebook he had summoned and moved closer. Soda immediately became nervous again. When he explained that the book allowed him to produce different items, she snatched it from his hands. Unfortunately, the writing inside meant nothing to her. From her perspective, Soda could simply be making everything up. So she decided to remove that possibility completely. Using magic, she placed a curse on Soda that prevented him from lying to her. If he deliberately spoke something opposite to the truth, the spell could kill him. Soda went completely pale. Now he was trapped inside enemy territory, interrogated by a demon commander, and physically incapable of lying. So naturally, his first move was to change the subject. Suddenly asked whether she had been having problems with her body odor, the room went completely silent. The commander's face turned red as she demanded to know how he knew something like that. Soda quickly explained that his mysterious notebook could identify problems and provide items designed to solve them. He summoned a product called UN99, an ointment created specifically to deal with unpleasant smells. The commander stared suspiciously at the strange container while Soda offered it to her for free. She questioned why a human would willingly help a demon without asking for anything in return. Soda answered honestly. As a businessman, seeing a customer satisfied with something he provided was enough. Human or demon made no difference. A customer was still a customer. And because the truth curse did not activate, the commander knew he genuinely meant every word. Fafnir stared at the strange container in Soda's hand. Fafnir slowly became willing to test the product, although she still refused to lower her weapon or leave herself defenseless around him. Instead, she sat down and ordered Soda to apply the ointment for her. And just like that, our boy went from confidently negotiating for his life to immediately forgetting how hands worked. Talking to female customers was easy because he could hide behind professional customer service, but getting this physically close to a girl was completely outside his experience. Fafnir exposed the area where the ointment needed to be applied and warned him not to try anything strange. Already sweating more than the person he was supposed to be helping, carefully began applying the medicine while reminding himself that this was technically just another job. Unfortunately, the product had an additional effect he had forgotten about, making the area unusually sensitive, and Fafnir began reacting to the strange sensation. Soda tried his best not to think about it, but while applying the ointment to the other side, his hand slipped somewhere it definitely was not supposed to go. He froze immediately, realizing that customer service training had officially failed to prepare him for this particular situation. Somehow, Soda survived the incident, and the product actually solved Fafnir's problem. But helping her did not magically earn him freedom. The demons became even more cautious after seeing that he could summon powerful items completely unknown to them, so Fafnir informed him that he would remain under supervision until they understood what his abilities were capable of. She had reassured him that they had no interest in killing people without reason, and even thanked him for helping her. For Soda, that was enough for now. The moment Fafnir left, he finally relaxed and started examining the box of Abyssal properly. That was when he discovered another feature connected to his ability, likability. Notebook could apparently show how positively someone felt toward him, and if he managed to raise that number high enough, he could potentially turn that person into an ally. Soda had no idea how to return to Earth, barely Getting allies sounded far more useful than complaining about his terrible spawn location. The strange ability also brought back memories of why Soda had created these ridiculous items in the first place. When he was in elementary school, he loved RPGs and spent his free time drawing imaginary magical tools inside the notebook. A girl from his class would sometimes look at his drawings and praise them, and because Soda liked her, he naturally started wondering whether those compliments meant she liked him too. Then one day, he overheard her talking with some other girls. When they teased her about possibly liking Soda, she immediately denied it and said there was no chance she would fall for the weird kid who spent his time drawing childish fantasy items. That one conversation hit Soda much harder than she probably realized. He finally understood that the praise he had been happily accepting was never romantic in the first place, and the embarrassment eventually inspired him to draw an item capable of revealing people's true feelings and affection levels. As he grew older, the whole notebook became a painful collection of childhood cringe. So by junior high, he sealed it inside a box and hid it deep in his closet. Yet somehow, when Nostra sent him to another world, the notebook came along too, and now every embarrassing invention inside it had become real. Soda still had no idea what Nostra expected him to accomplish when she casually told him to save this world. Returning home was still his main goal, but before that could happen, he needed information and at least a few powerful people who would not kill him on sight. His first obvious candidate was Fafnir. According to the notebook, she was the captain of the Dragon Squad and currently had around 20% likability toward him. Honestly, considering she had nearly executed him yesterday, 20% felt like incredible progress. Soda also noticed that beneath her intimidating appearance, Fafnir was serious, responsible, and surprisingly reasonable whenever he explained himself properly. Of course, thinking about her also reminded him of what happened while applying the ointment, causing him to turn red at exactly the worst possible moment, because Fafnir suddenly appeared behind him and demanded to know what he was doing. Soda nearly jumped out of his skin, and when she noticed him acting suspiciously, her likability immediately began dropping. Worse, the truth curse was still active, so he could not simply invent some convenient excuse. He quickly gave her a technically truthful explanation, and when the mark on his neck did not react, Fafnir finally accepted it. She then informed Soda that his punishment had officially been decided and opened his cell. For half a second, he thought he was being released, until he noticed the enormous metal ball chained to his leg. Soda tried dragging it forward and immediately questioned whether the demons had accidentally given him equipment meant for a giant. He promised Fafnir that he had no intention of running away and asked if the chain was really necessary, but she simply told him it was the rule. After watching him struggle, however, Fafnir casually picked up the massive weight with one hand and began carrying it for him. Soda could not hide his amazement and praised her strength, calling her incredible for lifting something he could barely move. Fafnir proudly explained that this was nothing special for the captain of the Dragon Squad, but her happily moving tail immediately exposed how much she enjoyed the compliment. Soda noticed it too. Okay, so apparently even terrifying demon commanders were not immune to getting a little proud when someone genuinely appreciated them. Fafnir led Soda deeper into the Demon King's castle, where he noticed that everything outside remained dark, even though plenty of time had passed. She explained that thick clouds constantly covered the demon world, preventing most sunlight from reaching the land. Eventually, they arrived at a room that would now belong to Soda. Rather than keeping him inside a prison cell forever, the Demon King's side had decided to make him Fafnir's servant, so she could personally monitor him, while also putting his strange abilities to use. While looking around the room, Soda discovered a book and picked it up, hoping it might teach him something about this world. He could not understand the writing, but one illustration immediately caught his attention. The woman in the picture looked exactly like his manager from Earth. When Soda asked about her, Fafnir identified her as Sage Nostra, an extraordinary magician said to possess enormous power and even the ability to travel between different worlds. Very few people had ever seen her true form, and countless legends surrounded her. But the most important one was an ancient prophecy she had left behind. When the world eventually fell into disaster because of war, a summoned hero would appear and save it. Soda finally understood that the woman managing his supermarket job had actually been the legendary Sage Nostra all along. Meanwhile, Fafnir seemed proud that the demons had already captured the location where the humans attempted to summon their hero. Believing their operation had been a success, Soda nervously listened while keeping one extremely important fact to himself. Nostra had personally summoned him into this world. Fafnir, meanwhile, was feeling pretty confident about the situation. His thoughts were interrupted when Fafnir suddenly leaned closer, and Soda immediately became conscious of just how little distance remained between them. He noticed that she smelled surprisingly pleasant. Her eyelashes were much longer than he expected, and once again his complete lack of experience around women started working against him. While trying to back away, Soda awkwardly moved his hands and accidentally touched Fafnir somewhere he absolutely did not intend to. He froze instantly while Fafnir's face turned bright red. Soda apologized as fast as humanly possible, insisting that it had been an accident, but Fafnir accused him of doing it deliberately. Desperate to explain himself while still trapped under the truth curse, Soda blurted out that he only became so nervous because she was genuinely cute. That answer caught Fafnir completely off guard, although the battle axe she raised a moment later made it clear that Soda's sudden honesty had not exactly made the situation safer. Before Fafnir could continue scolding him, the room suddenly went dark. The lamp had run out of oil, and Soda immediately realized that this was actually a perfect opportunity to demonstrate another item from the box of Abyssal. More importantly, after his accidental contact and terrible attempt at recovering from it, Fafnir's likability had fallen again, so solving another problem might help repair the damage. Soda summoned a small glowing ball that produced powerful artificial light. He explained that he originally drew the item as a child for his mother, after hearing her complain about how difficult rainy weather made ordinary household work. In this world, however, the creation was far more useful than he had ever imagined. The bright light filled the dark room, and Fafnir stared at it in amazement. Because the demon world was covered by thick clouds, she had almost no experience with anything resembling real sunlight. Instead of reacting cautiously like Soda expected, she immediately reached toward the glowing ball, touching and squeezing it with genuine curiosity. Watching the intimidating captain of the Dragon Squad become completely fascinated by a glowing object almost made Soda forget that she could probably throw him through a wall without trying. Seeing how much Fafnir enjoyed the warmth gave Soda another idea. During one of his many part-time jobs, he had worked at a pet shop and learned that reptiles needed sunlight to maintain their health. Since Fafnir possessed horns, a tail, and traits associated with dragons, he wondered whether the lack of sunlight in the demon world might be affecting her as well. When he asked how she had been feeling lately, Fafnir admitted that she often felt tired and strangely unmotivated. Soda explained that regular sunlight helped the body produce important nutrients, strengthen immunity, and reduce stress. Fafnir did not understand most of the science behind his explanation. She understood the important part. More light might make her feel better. As the glowing ball continued heating the room, she started sweating, and Soda suggested that exposing more of her body to the warmth would make the process more effective. Fafnir, taking his advice far more literally than Soda expected, immediately began removing some of her heavy clothing. Soda nearly had another system failure and tried to clarify what he meant, but Fafnir insisted that if this could make her stronger physically and mentally, she wanted to continue. As a commander serving the Demon King, she believed she could not afford to show weakness in front of her subordinates. Soda closed his eyes and tried to focus entirely on controlling the artificial sun while Fafnir asked him to increase the heat. He slowly raised the output, turning the small room into something closer to a sauna. Fafnir relaxed as the warmth spread through her body. By the time the session ended, Fafnir looked completely exhausted, but also strangely refreshed. Soda, however, immediately noticed another problem. The bed and surrounding area had become soaked from all the heat and sweat. Luckily, elementary school Soda had apparently prepared for almost every embarrassing problem imaginable. He summoned another item designed to absorb excess moisture, something he had originally invented after struggling with bedwetting as a child. The moment he used it, the excess liquid disappeared almost instantly, leaving everything dry again. Fafnir stretched her body and admitted that she felt as though she had been completely reborn, while Soda looked like the entire process had taken several years off his life. Still, the effort paid off. When Soda checked the box of Abyssal, he saw that Fafnir's likability toward him had increased. Fafnir herself was beginning to realize that Soda's strange products could be incredibly useful throughout the demon world. This human had already solved multiple problems she had simply accepted as normal, and his items functioned in ways even their magic did not. That gave her an idea. Rather than keeping those abilities hidden inside a private room, she suggested that Soda should open a shop and provide his products to other demons as well. Soda immediately hesitated. Walking into a city full of demons and announcing himself as a human merchant sounded like an excellent way to shorten his life expectancy. Instead, he suggested that Fafnir could introduce his products gradually and help him build trust with potential customers. She questioned why she should personally take responsibility for something like that, and Soda reminded her that she was technically his very first demon customer. He would not force her to help, but having someone respected like her introduce his products would make everything much easier. Fafner thought about the proposal before finally agreeing to consider it. Although she refused to promise anything yet, she then announced that she was returning to her own room, explaining that it was located right next to Soda's and warning him not to wake her over something trivial. Once she left, Soda finally had a moment to breathe. His original plan had simply been to raise Fafner's likability enough to make her an ally, but somehow their relationship had become much more physically awkward than anything he had expected. Fafner walked down the hallway, still thinking about the strange artificial sunlight and how much better her body felt afterward. For once, she seemed genuinely pleased with something a human had done for her. That peaceful mood lasted only a few seconds, because someone suddenly grabbed her from behind. Fafner's expression immediately darkened as she turned around, ready to attack whoever had just touched her so casually. Standing behind her was a girl with long bunny ears, wearing a cheerful expression while complimenting Fafner's impressive figure, openly complimenting her impressive marshmallows while Fafner stared back at her in annoyance. And this is where Soda's strange new life in the demon world is about to introduce him to yet another very unusual customer. If you've enjoyed the story so far, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see what happens next, comment part 2 down below, and we'll continue the story in the next video.